Now, the vast majority of homeowners who bought a leasehold house now regret it, with many feeling they were missold and some are now struggling to sell. That's according to a new report from the National Association of Estate Agents. The research follows controversy which led the government to crack down on what it called unjustified leaseholds, banning the agreements on nearly all new build houses. But the study says 45% of people did not know they were buying a leasehold property until it was too late, and 94% now say they wish they hadn't bought their home at all. We can talk more about it with Louie Burns, who's Managing Director of Leasehold Solutions. It's a group which aims to help leaseholders to take greater control of the value of their properties and works closely with the report authors. And also joining us via webcam is Mumshad Afrouz, a former leaseholder who was forced to sell his East London flat because of mounting costs he hadn't bargained for. Thank you both for coming in. Louie, you've been working with the researchers. Tell us more about some of the horror stories that you've encountered.
Well, as the research, as the report points out, there are lots of cases of real human misery caused by the unnecessary selling of properties, houses, as leasehold, and that's onerous ground rents, which have huge implications on people trying to buy the freehold of their homes. But also these licenses and permissions that people get charged, and there is no way of knowing what they will be beforehand. So we've seen people being charged many thousands of pounds just for permission to fit a conservatory in their own garden. I spoke to a gentleman who'd been charged £200 per room for permission to change the carpets in the room, and it goes on and on. We have hundreds of cases of these unnecessary licenses.
And these are things that people aren't aware about when they're buying the property necessarily?
No, because the leases have a clause that say that the freeholder can charge a fee, but that fee must be reasonable. Right. But unfortunately there's no legal definition of what reasonable is, and so they're allowed to charge, and if the leaseholders want to challenge that, they would have to take their freeholders to the first tier tribunal. But obviously there's a cost attached to that.
Okay, well, Mumshad, I said that you were forced to sell your flat because mounting costs were more than you bargained for. What were the costs that you were coming across?
The costs were simply quite exorbitant, and they were over and above the service charge as well as ground rent, and they were coming in the form of various maintenance as well as Section 20 invoices. So when I personally challenged the managing agent to actually quantify and also rationalize some of the costs, they were threatening me with legal actions, and initially the interaction was with the managing agent, and once they realized that some of my questions were quite forensic and I was asking specific details, and they decided to involve their legal counsel. Now, as you can imagine, as a leaseholder who raised this inquiry on my own, I felt quite intimidated. So, at the time, I felt quite unsupported, didn't really know where to turn to, other than to rely on my own resources and, take on the managing agent in as much as I possibly could. But I think, the existing arrangement and the legal relationship that we have at the moment is heavily skewed towards the freeholder, and we really do need to revisit and completely overhaul the system. The system is archaic and it's very feudal in its nature. So
sorry to interrupt. Did you know when you bought the flat what you were letting yourself in for in terms of potential liabilities as a leaseholder?
No, I didn't, and that's one of the drawbacks and perhaps one of the areas that could be looked at, because when you buy your first property, you're very excited to get onto the property ladder. The legal counsel or the conveyancer will do the very minimum. I don't think the process is fit for purpose.
I've said that have you sold your flat, or are you in the process of selling it? Because one of the things in the
No,
report today is...
I have sold my flat.
Oh, you have sold
out
it.
of choice. Yeah, I had no option but to sell up. The 7 years that I owned that flat, on average, I actually paid over £3,000, which equated to half of my mortgage payment. So I could no longer justify holding on to the flat. It was very much a family home. We had our first born there. It was in a very picturesque place overlooking Regent's Canal. We used to do,
Mumshad, I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I just want to, we're sort of short on time, and I do want to bring in Louie for a comment on people actually sometimes finding themselves unable to sell their property. Obviously, Mumshad managed to sell his, but one of the things in the report is because of these costs associated with leases, some people are finding they can't even sell their properties.
Yeah, because of the cost and the general awareness to it, people are trapped, and the report says that 60%, but that figure is growing more and more as people are struggling and feel trapped with growing families, not able to move. People who are being offered jobs and need to relocate can't. So the human cost of this is not considered very often, but it's huge, as the gentleman said.
Thank you both very much.